What if I told you the secret to building a million-dollar empire wasn't inherited wealth, but sheer grit and a hot comb? Imagine this. A woman born just after slavery, orphaned as a child, widowed by 20, struggling with hair loss that stripped away her confidence, yet she rose against all odds to become the first self-made female millionaire in America. Her name? Madam C.J. Walker. This is the story of how Sarah Breedlove, a daughter of formerly enslaved parents, transformed personal pain into global impact. It's not just the story of a beauty empire, it's the story of perseverance, vision, and how one woman changed history by empowering countless others. Picture this, a modern woman staring into the mirror, frustrated by her hair. Split ends, dryness, scalp problems. She feels small, less confident, wishing for a solution. Now cut to the early 1900s, where a woman stands tall, elegant, hair shining, Madam C.J. Walker. The bridge between those two images is not just hair care, it's empowerment. Walker knew beauty was never just about appearance. It was about dignity, self-worth, and the power to rise above circumstances. But before she became Madam, she was Sarah Breedlove, born in 1867 in Delta, Louisiana. She was the first in her family born free, just 2 years after the Civil War ended. Freedom, however, didn't mean equality. Sarah's early life was marked by poverty, cotton fields, and backbreaking labor. By the age of 7, she was orphaned. By 14, married. By 20, widowed with a young daughter. Most people would have surrendered to despair. But Sarah had something rare: fire. She worked as a washerwoman, earning barely $1 a day, hands cracked and raw from scrubbing clothes. Yet in her exhaustion, she dreamed. She dreamed of a life beyond survival, of creating something that would lift her and her daughter above the cycle of poverty. And then came the problem that changed everything: her hair. Like many African American women at the time, Sarah struggled with scalp conditions, dandruff, and hair loss caused by poor hygiene access, harsh products, and stress. For Sarah, this wasn't just about vanity, it was about self-esteem. Hair has always carried cultural power, and losing it felt like losing a piece of herself. But Sarah wasn't one to accept defeat. She experimented with home remedies, oils, and treatments. She studied her own scalp like a scientist. Eventually, she began working for Annie Malone, a successful African-American hair care entrepreneur. Under Malone's guidance, Sarah learned the fundamentals of product development and direct sales. But she also began to imagine something bigger, creating her own system, her own brand, her own empire. In 1906, she married Charles Joseph Walker, a salesman. With his support, she branded herself as Madam C.J. Walker. The title wasn't just a name, it was a symbol of sophistication, respect, and authority. She launched the Walker System, a series of hair care products including scalp treatments, shampoos, and the famous hot comb. But here's the genius. Madam Walker didn't just sell products, she sold possibility. She trained thousands of women, known as Walker agents, to not only use her products, but to sell them, building financial independence. Imagine this. In an era when black women had almost no opportunities outside of domestic labor, Walker gave them the tools to become entrepreneurs, community leaders, and professionals. Her company became a nationwide and eventually international movement. Beauty salons, training schools, and conferences flourished. By the time of her death in 1919, Madam C.J. Walker employed tens of thousands of women. She had built a business empire valued in the millions. But the real magic wasn't just in the products or profits, it was in the empowerment. Walker famously said, "I'm not merely satisfied in making money for myself, I am endeavoring to provide employment for hundreds of women of my race." She knew beauty was power. It wasn't superficial. It was about self-respect, dignity, and confidence. When women styled their hair with Walker's products, they weren't just looking better, they were feeling stronger. They were preparing to walk into a world that often dismissed them and say, "I matter, I belong, I am powerful." Let's pause and imagine her world. This was the Jim Crow era. Segregation, racism, and systemic exclusion. Women, especially black women, were doubly marginalized. And yet here was Madam C.J. Walker, driving around in her car, running her own factories, hosting conferences in elegant hotels, and donating generously to civil rights causes. She was more than a businesswoman. She was an activist. She funded scholarships at the Tuskegee Institute, contributed to anti-lynching campaigns, and supported leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. In doing so, she proved that true success is not about what you accumulate, it's about what you uplift. So what lessons can we draw from her life in 2025? First, your pain can become your power. Walker's empire started from her personal struggle with hair loss. Instead of hiding her pain, she transformed it into a solution that served millions. Second, empowerment multiplies. She didn't just rise for herself, she lifted others as she climbed. Her agents built wealth, confidence, and community. That ripple effect is still alive today in every entrepreneur who believes in lifting others along the way. Third, your circumstances don't define your destiny. Born poor, orphaned young, widowed early, Walker had every reason to give up. Instead, she chose resilience, she chose vision, and she built something bigger than herself. Madam C.J. Walker's story is more than history. It's a call to action. Think about your own life. What struggles are you facing today? What pain feels like a burden? What dream feels too far away? Walker's legacy whispers to us, use it. Don't let it break you. Let it build you. Maybe your empire won't be beauty products. Maybe it will be technology, education, art, or activism. But the principle remains the same. Greatness comes not from perfect beginnings, but from relentless determination. By the time she died in 1919, Walker was only 51 years old. Yet in that short lifetime, she transformed not only her own destiny, but the destiny of thousands. She left behind a mansion in New York, factories across the US, and a company that would continue for generations. But more importantly, she left behind an idea that women, and especially black women, could be entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionaries. Today, when we talk about women in business, when we see billion-dollar beauty brands, when we celebrate self-made entrepreneurs, we are walking on the path Madam C.J. Walker paved. So the next time you doubt yourself, remember her. A washerwoman earning $1 a day became America's first self-made female millionaire. She didn't inherit it. She didn't stumble upon it. She built it brick by brick, sail by sail, dream by dream. And if she could do it then, in a world set against her, imagine what you can do now. Because success isn't reserved for the privileged few. It belongs to those bold enough to chase it, strong enough to fight for it, and generous enough to share it. That is the true legacy of Madam C.J. Walker, the woman who turned struggle into strength and strength into an empire.